Lindsey Graham is an unstable madman. And honestly, we've known that for a long time. Like every war-obsessed Republican, Lindsey Graham is furious, vengeful, and so deeply insecure that the only way he can feel powerful is by clinging to the military-industrial complex. That's why he completely broke down on television today, as Donald Trump's threats against every Republican senator have sent him into a full-blown spiral. We're going to break it all down and explain how Trump's war-crazed agenda has now crashed into the Senate. But before we get into everything fueling Lindsey Graham's meltdown, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe if you enjoy the channel, it really helps support our work. Now, there's a lot to unpack with Lindsey Graham's panic, but first we need to start with one Republican senator who is a major reason Trump is making these extreme threats, Rand Paul, who said this earlier today about Greenland.
And just quickly, if I can get you on Greenland, you said this week you'll do everything to stop any kind of military takeover of Greenland. The White House said that was not off the table. But do you actually think he would use military force, or are we overreacting to that?
I would hope not. But let's say you wanted to buy Greenland, and I'm not disputing that that might be something we might want, to buy Greenland. You don't get there by angering and denigrating the people who live there and saying, we're going to march the Marines in and take it if you don't sell it to us. It doesn't make them very willing sellers. So really, if your goal is somehow we're going to rattle the saber and then they're going to sell it to us, I think it's having the opposite effect. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone in Greenland for it, but you'd also be hard-pressed to find somebody in Washington who's for a military invasion on either side of the aisle. So I think there'll be enough pressure to stop it. But the problem is they keep rattling the saber. They keep saying, we're going to do this. We keep this in our armamentarium that we will, reserve the right to invade Greenland. And that gets back to the War Powers Act. That's why this debate's so important, because it's not just about Venezuela. It's about Venezuela. It's about Greenland. It's about Colombia. It's about Cuba. It's about whether or not the people get a say in whether we go to war.
Rand Paul is causing me a lot of problems because I keep finding myself having to give him credit, and I really don't want to. But he's right. Donald Trump doesn't do diplomacy. The only kind of diplomacy Trump practices is the kind that somehow ends with him getting a $400 million Saudi jet. That's who he is. Trump does the type of diplomacy where he threatens a country, they flatter him, hand him a crown, and then he signs a deal that ends up hurting Americans. And let's be clear. We're down 65,000 manufacturing jobs in the last year because of Trump's tariffs and these so-called diplomatic arrangements he brags about. Deals that never really materialize. But Rand Paul is absolutely right about this. There is no reason to be both threatening war with Greenland and also trying to buy Greenland. There's no real purpose to any of this Greenland nonsense. Republicans love to talk about the territorial advantage, but if this is about Russia, then Ukraine is a territorial advantage too. It's right next to it and is already our ally. So maybe think about that? Of course not, because what Trump is trying to do has nothing to do with territory, global strategy, or real foreign policy. Trump just wants to expand his authoritarian project and grab as much power as possible. J.D. Vance wants the exact same thing, which is why he said this.
First of all, we talked to some of the senators who are going to vote the wrong way, in my view, on this resolution today. Much of their argument was based more on a legal technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. And that'll continue to be how we approach things.
I hate to be the guy that's, like talking about how much he loves the institutions and the institutions, and we got to protect the sanctity of the Senate, because what has that inherently, racist body ever done for us? Not a lot. But J.D. Vance is advocating, and Donald Trump is, of course, as well, to take all power away from the legislative process in an effort to make sure that there are no longer any checks on themselves. But what they don't understand is that's a two-way street. And when Democrats come into power, I think they should go maybe not as far as Donald Trump in terms of breaking every single law, but joining, well, you've expanded the chief executive's role, and so we will continue to as well. But Donald Trump, knowing that that can only go so far as Republican senators continue to vote against him, posted this, and it's what led to Lindsey Graham's meltdown. A few days ago, Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social that Republicans should be ashamed of the senators that just voted with Democrats in an attempt to take away powers to fight and defend the United States of America. Donald Trump then listed off those senators and say that they should never, of course, hold office again. So Donald Trump, whose threats have fallen pretty flat in everything that he's done recently, thinks that this is gonna change that. All that he can threaten Josh Hawley and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, which go ahead, please. I hope she's going to lose to Graham Plattner, so that'll be great. But it's not just Donald Trump who is now threatening his Republican colleagues. Lindsey Graham is also breaking down on air. Donald Trump's threats have Lindsey Graham losing his mind, and that's why he said this, and followed it up with a really frightening post.
Ron.
The War Powers Act was passed in 1973 by a bunch of liberal Democrats. It's a power grab by the Congress against the commander-in-chief. Every president since 1973 has rejected the idea that Congress can substitute our judgment for theirs. So what these five are good friends. They're creating a situation where you have 535 commander-in-chiefs, not one. There's never been a court case in the history of the country where a military operation was terminated by the Supreme Court because Congress didn't approve. There have been 130 military operations by the commander-in-chief without congressional approval. So here's my point. You're creating a disaster for the country. If a member of Congress doesn't like what the president's doing as commander-in-chief militarily, cut off funding for that operation. We have power of the purse. You can do that. If you think the president doing something illegally, you can impeach him. But we can't have a situation where Congress becomes commander-in-chief. That would be a disaster. This is an unconstitutional power grab. To my colleagues, you're doing a lot of damage. You're emboldening our enemies. You're restricting President Trump. Unconstitutionally sound, doing a lot of damage. Stop it.
Senator, over the weekend, you tweeted about
Can I add one thing, one last thing?
Yes.
I've been a military lawyer for 33 years. I was a judge, advocate in the Air Force. I was a prosecutor, defense attorney, military judge. I feel comfortable talking about this. What you're doing is wrong. Go ahead.
Senator.
Lindsey Graham also posted on Twitter, "My advice to the commies running Cuba and oppressing its people. Call Maduro and ask him what to do if you can get through. That is, if I were you, I'd be looking for a new place to live." I truly don't understand this. Lindsey Graham is basically telling the authoritarian regime in Cuba, the very people oppressing their citizens, that if they don't stop Donald Trump, a man currently sending armed thugs door to door, dragging people from their homes and cars, shooting them as they try to escape, and outright murdering people, then Trump will come after them. Lindsey Graham's argument is, stop being dictators. Or Trump will respond by being an even bigger dictator. Ignore Congress. Ignore the Constitution. Ignore international law. Spend American money recklessly to liberate Cuba. So whatever that even means. Just so Marco Rubio has something to posture about. That's what Lindsey Graham is selling as foreign policy. And then he tries to blame liberals in the 70s for being skeptical of war. Really? What was happening in the 70s that might make Americans question the government and endless conflict? How many tens of thousands of young Americans died? Was there a war? Can't quite remember, Lindsey? Yeah, Vietnam. Maybe. Just maybe. People were right to question pointless, illegitimate, catastrophic wars. But Lindsey Graham doesn't care about history, accountability, or consequences. He wants the president to wield unchecked power like Henry Kissinger with fewer friends, dragging us into unnecessary global conflicts because it makes him feel powerful. Lindsey Graham is a genuinely deranged figure, a war-obsessed extremist who wants to hand over Congress's authority to Donald Trump simply because Trump flatters him and tosses him a golf hat. He is pathetically easy to manipulate, shamelessly desperate for validation, and constantly humiliated by the very MAGA base he tries to please. They don't respect him. They mock him. Meanwhile, he wants to give up the only meaningful responsibility he has, governing responsibly, just so Trump can feel even more like a dictator. This is who Lindsey Graham is. Pathetic, obsessed with war, eager to waste your tax dollars, and ready to surrender democracy to a reality TV authoritarian. And we're not going to stop calling him out. If you want to support that, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and if you stayed to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.